All right, I'm back for another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Pop Culture Cosmos. Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the Lakers Fast Break, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows, and if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, support, subscribe, whatever you can do to take care of us here at the podcast, or the Domination Sports Nation podcast, it is truly appreciated. I just wanted to give everybody an update. I also have new episodes out this week on the Pop Culture Cosmos, covering all the latest news and trends in pop culture. And of course, our NBA Finals coverage continues right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast. Well, I'll tell you what, for fantasy owners out there, it's kind of all over the place. From those that are really just digging in, enjoying everything that they're doing and all the decisions that they're making, to others that are kind of still in despair now that they could be 0-4 or 1-3 and really struggling to go ahead and have their team survive. Plus, even more folks out there who are very concerned of what's going on and are being adversely affected by all the teams that are getting swayed one way or the other because of what's going on with the coronavirus. Where we're going to go ahead and talk about all the great things that are going on in the NFL when it concerns fantasy football. And on today's show, again, is my good friend indeed. You got to check him out at Chris L Sports on the Twitter. Plus also as well, everything that he does for Domination Sports Nation. I've not only got one awesome Lardieri, I've got two. It's Dominic and Chris Ardieri. And guys, it's great to have you both on the program here today.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, a podcast superstar. Every time you throw a podcast on the air, you seem to always get a great reception. I've heard many episodes already, and I'll tell you what, if everybody out there is listening, you got to go ahead and share some love for the Domination Sports Nation that's on each and every time out. You got to go ahead and check out every episode that's on there. Plus, it gives you all the latest news and greatest information that's coming out in the sports world. They not just touch on the NFL, but basketball and so many other the sports as well. But guys, it's about football this time, and I want to hear your thoughts. First off, Dom, I'm going to go with you. If you're in Dallas and you're worried about the Cowboys fan, I will tell you what, probably when I was about 7 or 8 for a little period of time, living in LA, because all we did was get the Cowboys games each and every Sunday. I'm going to admit it. I was a Cowboys fan for a while. I loved Tony Dorsett. I loved Roger Staubach. I loved the way they went about doing things, America's team, how they were promoted. As a little kid, I was sucked in for a little while. But, Jerry Jones took over. Tom Landry said goodbye. He probably kicked Tom Landry to the curb. I think that's probably the best way to say it. But it no longer became America's team. It became Jerry Jones's team. And yes, they did win world championships early on, but it's pretty much gone a little bit downhill, little by little from there. But for fantasy owners, it's still kind of a mixed bag, because while they have the worst defensive lineup on the planet, as an offensive side of the ball, they're still extremely valuable. But I want to hear your thoughts, Dom, on this when it comes to fantasy football owners out there that are talking about Dallas and trading this player and trading that player. Ezekiel Elliott, maybe he's not getting the ball enough, or is Dak Prescott overrated, or what about the wide receivers? Which one are going to be thrown to each and every week? Still, I believe they're one of the most viable offenses out there in the NFL, even though their defense is even worse.
Yeah, they're almost like a Big 12 team where they have the high-powered offense and just no defense. So I would say Dak Prescott is maybe a questionable quarterback situation for you, but if you have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott or CeeDee Lamb or even Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper, I think you're good there.
I don't know about. I've been a big supporter of Dak Prescott. He is the starting quarterback on one of my teams, and no, he doesn't have. How should I say this? He's right now statistically a top 5 fantasy football quarterback, simply because he's thrown more yards than anybody else. It's close to 1,700. Now, mind you, he hasn't thrown as many touchdowns, which I think is upsetting a lot of fantasy football owners out there. He's only thrown 9 compared to what some we're seeing from Russell Wilson and some others that are in the teens and actually getting close to 20 at this point in time. But still, 1,700 yards, Chris. That's nothing to sneeze at. And that's pretty much what's keeping fantasy football owners happy like myself. Because again, in one of my other leagues, I have him as my starting quarterback. And so far, I'm not regretting it.
Absolutely not. For all the talk about Dak and his contract as an elite quarterback, well, in the world of fantasy football, like we say, none of that matters. He's putting up the numbers. And what's crazy, if he's throwing this many yards and his touchdown production so far, a quarter of the way in, is only 9. Imagine what can happen if this team really starts to struggle or things get desperate and Jerry starts spouting off on his weekly radio show. I think you might even see bigger numbers from Dak. But I got to hand it to Dom. He was very bullish on CeeDee Lamb. We didn't get him in either of our leagues, but I think that's the guy you got to keep your eye on, fantasy owners.
Absolutely, because I had Michael Gallup in one of my other teams, and unfortunately he is now behind in the pecking order, behind CeeDee Lamb. He's getting more targets. I agree with you, Dom, on Ezekiel Elliott, because I think that was very astute what you said, because I guess right now it's because of the depleted running back corps that are out there. He is, I think, second or third overall points-wise in fantasy football for running backs. But to me, I think at this point in time, I could see so much more production from Ezekiel. I think that he's still being held back because of the offense that it's in. And I think right now, if he actually were just to go ahead and put out to his full potential, I think he could actually be even close to or even surpassing what Alvin Kamara is doing right now.
Yeah, he's definitely a really good running back. They just don't use him enough. I feel like they're mostly a pass-first offense, so Elliott's not getting as many touches as you would say Alvin Kamara, especially with the situation with the Saints where Michael Thomas is injured, so they're definitely running the ball a lot more. So I would say it's good to have Elliott because, once they're in the red zone, and of course they might be playing a good team with a good secondary, you always know that they'll give it to him.
Absolutely. So that's very astute right there for you. I want to thank you for going ahead and sharing that. And Chris, I'll leave our Dallas discussion with this. Yes, they as a regular team in the NFL, they're awful. Their defense is just beyond horrific. And Mike McCarthy should be soundly criticized right now, as he is. But I want to ask you this: when it comes to right now, those individuals like myself, because one of my teams is doing okay, faring very well. And the other team, even though it has a loaded lineup, is not. Should I consider going ahead and seeking out trades, with some of the Dallas players I have? Because I think right now for them, as in Dallas, I think right now it's a buy. I don't want to say it's a sell high right now, because it's a sell high, buy low type deal. So I think for right now it's a sell high type deal for Dallas, because I think you can really get some nice returns on anybody relating to the Dallas offense.
Yeah, I think that's a wise move for 2 reasons. Number one, you look at the wide receivers, or 3 of them. They're all viable fantasy options. Maybe you pick the one that had the hotter week, or, an Amari Cooper might be a bigger name, and deal him now, just because there are only so many targets that Prescott can spread the ball around to. And 2, like Dom hit on, especially as the dynamics of the games change and they're not playing from behind as much theoretically, or if Zeke just does like he's done periodically and complain that he's not getting the rock enough, you may see McCarthy might start giving Elliott the ball more, and that could decrease the production down the road for those receivers or even Dak. So I think it's good. You always want to sell high, and if you can, even if it's a little bit inflated price, now might be the time to do it with the way they're putting the ball in the air there.
Conversely, in the state of Texas, there's a lot of issues going on with the Houston Texans. And right now, for fantasy owners and NFL fans that are really behind the Texans, it's really a bad time. 0-4. Chris, this is something we saw coming. I saw coming. You saw coming like weeks and weeks and weeks ago when we talked about this with the Andre Hopkins trade. It seemingly was just something that we could see. DeAndre Hopkins trade. When we saw this a long time coming and saw the issues there, and probably what we'll still consider as one of the worst trades ever in the NFL. I want to hear your thoughts on what the Texans' future will now be like for fantasy football owners, for Deshaun Watson or anybody else on that team.
Yeah, at the time I thought maybe if you could wait around on Watson, you might get some value in the later rounds with him, considering he, had previously been a top 5, top 10 fantasy quarterback in years past. But yeah, with Bill O'Brien gone, I really don't know what to make of how the offense is going to be run. Not that O'Brien was any sort of genius, but they were so bad. Is it a function of they don't have the weapons on the field? They really miss Hopkins. They've got not much of a semblance of a running game. Hard to say, but one thing I read today, it was interesting. Apparently, J.J. Watt had gotten into it with O'Brien at practice. They had a big blowout, so who knows? Maybe the team will be happy, rally the troops around Romeo Crennel, who's been in the league for a while. I'm not quite sure, but regardless, I think you need to lower your forecast, your expectations on Watson. But that said, I don't think it'll be as bad as it's been here in the first 4 weeks.
Now, Dom, I want to ask you this when it concerns fantasy football. Seeing Deshaun Watson at this point in time, maybe he's on a team in your league then, but you really desire him. You really need to fill that quarterback slot, maybe either as a backup or as somebody who could potentially be your starter. Is he someone that you're going to maybe throw feelers out there a little bit? I wouldn't say maybe buy low per se, as what we were talking about just before when it comes to some of the Cowboys. But I really think at this point in time, you might be able to get him at a pretty decent price.
Yeah, you will be able to get him because I know a lot of people are bailing out, but it's just 4 weeks. You never know what can happen. You never know if Will Fuller can blow up because he's their wide receiver 1 now. So you just don't know. But all I've seen these past 4 weeks is that Watson has no blocking for him. The run game has been horrific, and he has no one to throw to. So it's hard to see that happen, especially with the capability that he has. We saw last year he did really well. So you just don't know at this point.
Absolutely, indeed. Once again, I'm talking to Dominic and Chris Lardieri, both of the Dominic Sports Nation podcasts. You got to go ahead and check out today wherever you get your podcasts because it's really a great read. It's great listen to. It's a great podcast indeed. Guys, I want to go ahead and talk about right now with the waiver wire after week 4 because pretty much, as you know by now, most of the players that are out there that are attractive. I was still able to get one of the top 5 tight ends still available that's out there recently. So I'm very happy about that. But I want to ask you this. Are there really still any steals out there on the waiver wire? Because I know when I looked for running back and wide receiver, it's really hard to find one right now. Chris?
Oh, it's slim pickings to say the least. And we play in Yahoo League, so every Tuesday night and then Wednesday morning is I guess like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in Fantasyland. See what we anticipate, what we end up getting. But I'll go with one. Dom, when I'm done, you can talk about your favorite running back of the week. I feel like we're flipping running backs every week. We're looking for wide receiver depth where possible. We got lucky this week. Justin Herbert from the LA Chargers is still on waivers. We got a couple teams in that league. I know one of whom is a big Chargers fan and another one who's very astute about picking up quarterbacks before they blow up. I guess we had a higher priority, Dom, because we ended up with him this morning. Now, mind you, our starter is Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes apparently had a little interaction with Stephon Gilmore, who's now tested positive with COVID this past Monday night. So as we've been beating the drum all year, Gerald, got to have QB depth. And I really like what Herbert's been doing. I know he makes some silly mistakes and turnovers, but the guy almost set a record for being the first rookie quarterback to throw for over 300 yards in his first 3 games. He fell 10 yards shy. I feel comfortable with having him on the bench. We have Matt Stafford on bye. We dropped him. Cam Newton, unfortunately, came down with COVID. And I think bigger picture, that's the story of fantasy football this year. You may have a guy on your team and you like him, and then he'll be gone before you know it. So stay active on waivers.
Absolutely. That's a good call indeed. Go ahead, Dom.
Oh, sorry. I would say
you're good.
The running back that I definitely saw that we had to target this week was Dearness Johnson from the Browns. I know Kareem Hunt's a starter for now with Nick Chubb being injured, but they say that's 6 solid weeks of having 2 good running backs in the lineup. I know he had 13 carries last week for almost 100 yards, so that's pretty solid for coming off the bench, and I thought, hey, maybe they could dump him in the red zone situation, and the Browns are looking pretty good too, so I thought that was a good pickup for us.
Yes, I agree on that. That's very astute right there for you. I just want to go ahead and say, I mean, if you can find anything out there, I would go ahead and say now's the time to scour the waiver wire, because in week 5, in week 6, in week 7, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And it just really gets more difficult to go ahead and find anybody that can go ahead and give you any kind of contribution to your team, no matter if they're backups or whatever, because you're going to start getting into like second, third line players and just really players who are not contributing at all. So please, if you're out there, you need to go ahead and check the waiver wire out. If you need to fill any spots in your team, I would say do it right now, because bye weeks are starting to come in to play. So people have to be aware of that. I've already seen some teams that have major spots that are coming up this week that are on a bye, and that's not COVID related bye. That's just regular bye. So if you're in there, you're out there and you want to go ahead and are looking, you need to look right now, because the waiver wire needs to be hit up sooner rather than later. All right. I want to go ahead and thanks so much again, Chris Lardieri and Dominic Lardieri of Domination Sports Nation for being on the show today. Now, Dominic, I want to ask you this. When it comes to what we're seeing with the schedule is concerned, how concerned are you about this whole NFL bubble that's not a bubble, that's really not anywhere near like the NBA bubble in regards to how it treats and how it effectively deals with the coronavirus? Because it's really playing havoc with the NFL schedule, which in turn is playing havoc with fantasy football.
Yeah, I know. Like my dad said with Cam Newton, he was a solid backup for us if Mahomes had ever gotten COVID, and then he gets COVID. So you just don't know. And I think the NFL football is that one sport where it's kind of hard to do a bubble. Where basketball, you just need 3 arenas and you're good to go. But football, I mean, the stadiums have to be big. You have to have a lot of fields because of how many teams there are. So it's hard for the NFL to do a bubble. I know that with the outbreaks now, it's just hard to see all that happening, but you just don't know what their choices are now. They don't have any choices, really.
Absolutely. So there's all, basically right now, we don't know from one day or next. An outbreak could happen on a team, and that could be it as far as for them being on the schedule. So you have to be aware of what's going on. If you're not staying up to date on what's going on with the schedule, what games are continuing, then you're being put behind. And that's going to be detrimental to your team and your season, especially if you're someone competing right now at the top or at a competitive level on your team as compared to your league. So please be aware of the situations going on with the NFL schedule. If anything changes, then it gets put back. If any major players come down, unfortunately, with the coronavirus, it is now becoming more common, and we're seeing it more. And I think we're going to be seeing it even more as we continue this NFL season. I want to end this part of the conversation with you, Chris, and that is, do you think that we're going to be able to continue the season as a whole? Because right now it's starting out as a little bit of a trickle, person here, player there, the team here, a game there. How bad do you really think it can get?
I think it get really bad. And I initially thought when we started having these positive tests come up that it might be like baseball where, all right, this game's going to be canceled or need to be pushed back another month or two, and maybe the other games can go on. But baseball's got what, about half the roster size of your average NFL team. So you've got that problem. Two, you're really not isolating in the sense that when you're home or you have a home game, it's like everyone's staying in the same hotel, like MLB is doing with the postseason right now at these kind of neutral locations. So it's hard to keep on top of people. And then third, look, I've beaten the Roger Goodell drum or dead horse or whatever it is for many years. And his way of managing things, he's not the most proactive guy. And his solution for everything is to just kind of lay the strong arm of the law down. In this case, he's fining coaches for not wearing masks, threatening the Titans with possibly forfeiting a game or whatever. That's all well and good, but you haven't addressed the problem. And under his leadership, I'm less confident that we might be able to get this entire season completed. So as a result, like you said, creates chaos for this fantasy player. Case in point, Dom and I have a team. The Steelers were originally going to play last Monday night. Then they postponed the game. Well, guess what? James Conner's now got a sudden bye week. The Steelers defense has a bye week. Add an injury to Devontae Adams potentially on Monday night. We've got to start dropping some guys, shuffling the lineup, last-second decisions, and we put the Steelers D on waivers, hoping they'll sneak through, like we kind of do from time to time with the bye week rotation, and someone picked them up today. So it creates a lot of havoc. You've got to be ready. The way news is breaking, they're saying now the Titans are scheduled to play the Bills, but then the Titans had a bunch of players go out and have an illegal practice with no mask during their bye week. Who knows now? So now if you're a Bills owner, you've really got an issue if this game gets canceled altogether. So like you said, stay on top of it, but you've got to have that depth on the bench. And then two, lower your expectations. Our teams put up a bunch of points the first couple weeks. It was nice. And now here, I think you just got to be happy in some leagues to crack 100 points and squeak out a win.
Well, speaking of week 5 in the NFL, it's coming upon us. So I want to ask your thoughts on this, guys. Dom, I'll start with you first. For fantasy football owners out there, I want to hear about what your thoughts are on a couple matchups this weekend you think fantasy football owners should be pointing towards this weekend.
Well, I think one thing is the Monday Night Football game between the Chargers and the Saints. If you're an Alvin Kamara owner, that's a definite start because the Chargers do not have the greatest run defense. You saw it last week with Ronald Jones, so that's a definite start as well. I would say another start is if you have any Rams players that are going up against Washington, play Cooper Kupp, play Robert Woods. If it's even Jared Goff, if you don't have a lot of depth at quarterback, go play him too because Washington doesn't have the greatest defense. You saw last week with Lamar Jackson. He was running all over. He had a really good game too, so you just got to play those guys.
Chris, do you have any thoughts on any games that you're pointing towards this weekend for fantasy football owners out there?
This should be easy, low-hanging fruit. We hit on it earlier. The Cowboys play the Giants. While the Giants defense really hung in there and played well against the Rams, I was impressed by them. Yeah, they played well enough to win, but I kind of think that was a one-week aberration, and I would not be surprised if the aforementioned Dak and Zeke light up the Giants this week. And then two, I think as well, the Raiders going in to play Kansas City. I think Kansas City really kind of sputtered and underachieved, if anything, Monday night. There were a couple of silly turnovers from Brian Hoyer where we've seen that before. I didn't think the offense was that sharp, but the way the Raiders' defenses looked, especially last week against the Bills and Derek Carr with his turnovers, I think that bodes well for your Chiefs starters. I think they'll be on the field for a lot of snaps this coming Sunday.
I'm thinking right now of the Rams at Washington. They're headed over to Washington. Washington just booted Dwayne Haskins, their 2019 first-round draft choice, out of the lineup. So they've got a new quarterback in there. It's amazing. After snapping his leg in the not-too-distant past, Alex Smith is now the number 2 quarterback option there. So who knows, if it gets really bad, he could be thrown in there. But if you've got the Rams defense, this could be a time where you may be interested in picking them up or starting them because they could actually do very well this weekend with a brand new quarterback in there. Who knows? Plus, also, the Rams are not playing too badly. So if you've got any of the Rams players out there, including Jared Goff, who's been even on their winning ways kind of off and on, this could be an on week for Jared Goff. So look forward to the Rams, I think, winning big in Washington this weekend. So just thinking about that right now. I think that's some great plays from all of us for fantasy football owners out there. But before we head on out, guys, Dom, I just want to let you know your dad each and every week always takes us to the doghouse. So, Chris, what do you have lined up for this week right here at the Woof Woof Woof, your famous doghouse?
Oh, my famous doghouse is about to live in infamy. 0-4, another loss again last week. Clearly not my year. The last 2 years have been good. With the dogs have been kind to me. I'm going to go to that Bills-Titans game. And, at this point, Gerald, I think I'll be happy if they just play it. But in some circles, I see the Titans as a home dog getting 7. I'm sure that's a function of the way the Bills have been so hot and Josh Allen has looked, and the fact that we really don't know who will be starting for the Titans right now, given the outbreak they've had. But people forget Titans are a 3-0 team. They're technically coming off a bye week. I think that's a lot of points to give to a team of at home, that caliber, a playoff team. So I'll say take the Titans. Hopefully I get off the schneid. We're here into the second quarter of the season and into October. Maybe my luck will change, but don't hold your breath.
Well, you know what? Your pick'em challenge, you've done very well on that. You're right now 9-3 overall in your picks. And everybody want to check out the Facebook page for Inside Sports Fantasy Football. They can keep up to date on the 3 picks that we make for each weekend. I'm right now, unfortunately, going on the slide. So my slide is actually down to 6-6 after a very hot start. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give it the good old show coming up this weekend. So we'll see what happens. But right now, Chris is at 9-3, and I'm at 6-6. Dom, I just got a question in. I want to go ahead and start off with you on this first. It's from Blue Crew Chep, and thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate it. He's got a 10-team PPR. All right. He has 1 running back and 1 flex spot open. And he's asking who should he fill it with? Either Drake, Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon, D. Montgomery, or Joshua Kelly. He also has Higgins and John Brown if he chooses not to roll with the 2 running backs. And he said thank you, obviously. So truly appreciate Brew Crew Shep. That's an awesome question. I'm going to show it right there on the screen for everyone right there. So I ask you, Dom, you want to hit that first? Your thoughts on it, because I have some of my own as well.
Well, I think that Melvin Gordon's actually been pretty hot these past couple of weeks, and I know the Broncos are playing the Patriots defense, who looked pretty good last week, so I don't know too much about Melvin Gordon. Who are the Cardinals playing actually this week?
The Cardinals, they have got, let's just check that out right now. They are going to be playing the Jets. Jets. At the Jets at NYJ. And Darnold is out of the lineup. I do know that.
Yeah, so I think Kenyon Drake could be a starter as well. And if you don't have any faith in Kenyon Drake, then you could go with Joshua Kelly too, because I know he's going to be splitting carries with Justin Jackson as well. So you could do any of those. I know Josh Allen's been throwing to John Brown as well too, so you get a definite starter for him. And then for T. Higgins, I think that could be actually a really good start there, because I know they're playing the Ravens, and the Ravens will definitely try to lock down Tyler Boyd, who is the Bengals wide receiver 1. So you could sneak in T. Higgins in there, and I know he'll probably get a lot of targets from Joe Burrow.
Dominic, I appreciate everything that you said on that one. A great answer for it. Chris, do you have anything to chime in? And then I've got another question for you guys coming up from another awesome watcher right now.
Excellent. Yeah, I got to agree with Dom. You start anyone playing the Jets, I would go with Jake there. Drake. I would definitely start Drake as a running back. Of the 2 wide receivers, I like Dom's logic. They're both good. I would think I would lean towards Higgins. I like the way Burrow's playing. I think he's kind of a sneaky sleeper play. We've got him on one team, so I say roll the dice there with him.
I'm going to go again with Kenyon Drake. I really think that he had a bad game. I just didn't think it was just not something I think might have been like a bump in the road. I really think that Arizona does, for the most part, rely on him. So I think having him in lineup is a must at this point in time. And I know you guys like Higgins, and I do too, but you know what? I'm feeling John Brown for some reason or the other. Higgins is a good, solid choice, and you can't go wrong with that. But I'm thinking John Brown. I really like the fact that Buffalo is riding on an all-time high, seemingly, or at least not an all-time high, but at least a long time, so to speak, offensive-wise. So I really think that right now, for me, I would go with Kenyon Drake and John Brown. But Blue Crew Chap, once again, thank you so much for watching. It's a great question. I have another question for you guys right here from Chicken Man. So should he trade Gallup for Debo? So I want to hear your thoughts on this. Dom, I want to go with you first. Should he trade Gallup for Debo?
Well, I think that there's a good answer to that question. I think CeeDee Lamb will definitely slide into wide receiver 2 if Gallup doesn't pick up the pace and try to get more targets from Dak Prescott because I know that Prescott hasn't been throwing to him much. So that could be a good trade, especially that Debo had a quiet week last week, but that was his first start of the year. And without many receivers, I know CJ Beathard is going to look to throw to Debo a lot, along with Brandon Ayuk and Kendrick Bourne. So I guess that could be a good trade as well. You're probably getting a steal with Debo Samuel, who will be playing a second game this week.
I'm going to go with yes because I have Gallup on one of my teams, and he hasn't done much for me. I thought he was really going to be someone that's going to get that like really long strikes, TDs, as far as 20, 30, 40-yard touchdown passes in that type of offense, but I really haven't seen that yet. So I would go and do the trade personally, just to let you know, Chicken Man. Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm going to agree with you, both of you. I think it's an excellent case of sell semi-high and buy low. Samuel was kind of on a proverbial pitch count last week. He's going to ease his way back in. What I'm thinking in a few weeks, as he gets more fit, more into game shape, more reps, and then Jimmy Garoppolo returns, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say, well, we'll see the Debo Samuel from last year. I don't think they put him out there if he wasn't healthy and wasn't ready to play. They're just trying to be cautious here.
Absolutely. So there you go, Chicken Man. Thank you so much for watching and listening as well, everybody out there. Blue Crew Chep, same thing. You guys have been awesome for your questions, just tremendous questions indeed. If you have any questions for us at Inside Sports Fantasy Football, I'm going to start you first off with Chris Sardieri at Chris L Sports on the Twitter. Also, if you have a question for Dom, that's the best way to get a hold of it is through Dad at Chris L Sports on Twitter. Also, as well, check out the Domination Sports Nation podcast. And for us, IS Fantasy Football at yahoo.com or at Inside Sports FF on Twitter if you need to get a hold of us. Before we head on out, Chicken Man has one more thing he wants to ask. Dominic, so I'll start with you first. Your thoughts on Robert Tonyan?
Well, even though he has a bye week this week, I think that is a really good pickup because you saw how many targets he was getting against the Falcons last week and against the Saints as well, too. I mean, the Packers are short with wide receivers, so Aaron Rodgers looking to throw to the next best guy, and that's Robert Tonyan, I think. And, of course, he's going to throw to Aaron Jones as well, but I think that he's a big target for Aaron Rodgers, and as you've seen these past couple weeks, he likes to throw to him.
I know there's another tight end in Green Bay that people were expecting more out of, and Robert Tonyan's kind of surprised some people, but I will say this, Chicken Man, he was rated number 2 right now. He's actually number 2 on the as far as overall fantasy rankings going into his bye week. I picked him up on the waiver wire as one of the true bargains that's still out there. I know he's on a bye week, but I'm going to stash him. I'm going to see if I can go ahead and play him coming up either next week or the week after. Chris, do you have any thoughts on Robert Tonyan? Because he's still on a lot of waiver wires out there, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think people got scared away from the bye week. If you ask me, take a running back. I mean, I'll give you an example of a guy we released because he's just hurt and can't seem to get into the lineup, even though I do like him long term, is Zach Moss. I mean, if he's not going to get on the field, you release a guy like that who might just be taking up a bench spot. Stash Tonyan, release whoever your starting tight end is this week, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised going forward. We've railed for years about the lack of depth at tight end in fantasy football, and kind of thinking he's a gift. And Dom and I may need to go out there and see if we could take up some of my own advice and maybe make room for him on one of our teams.
Well, I did on one of mine, and I'm very happy that I got him because if he gives me any kind of contribution, what he's done so far, it could be something that could save my team because that's the team I'm not doing so hot on. So if that's the case, he could really save my season just to pick up like that. It's not like finding a diamond in the rough, so to speak. So that's a great question, Chicken Man. Again, we truly appreciate you going ahead and watching us right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football. And again, if you have any questions out there, at Chris L Sports, both Dom and Chris can go ahead and get that question for you and answer it for you. We'll get right back to you on that. Or at Inside Sports FF on Twitter, or IS Fantasy Football at yahoo.com. Well, Dominic, Chris, before we go, and before, Chris, you share your final thoughts, Dom, you can share some final thoughts too. Dom, I want you to go ahead and actually give me a reason, well, give people out there a reason, why people need to check out each and every week your latest episodes of Domination Sports Nation.
Well, not only do we talk about fantasy football, we talk about NFL games. We also talk about the NBA and how that's going. And then we also talk about some baseball, too, because the baseball postseason has started as well. So you're getting everything with sports on the Domination Sports Nation podcast. So you should definitely go check it out.
Absolutely. Domination Sports Podcast. Indeed, the Domination Sports Nation is, tell you what, it's definitely something that people have got to check out each and every week, wherever you get your podcasts. But Chris, it's been so great having your son on the show. He needs to come back as much as he can, because obviously his insight is greatly appreciated here on this program. But before we head on out, my friend, we've got to hear some final thoughts on what you're looking at for this weekend in the NFL.
Well, I just want to thank you for giving Dom an opportunity to shine here on the fantasy show. Now you see why our teams do so well and why he puts me to shame even on our own podcast. And by the way, if you do want to reach out to Dom for some of his excellent analysis and advice, you can DM us on Instagram at Domination Sports Nation. Please follow us. We post updates when the podcast is released, etc. Greatly appreciate the support. At this point, here's what I'm hoping, Gerald. There's not a COVID outbreak, and I've hoped that for many weeks here since March, and for purely selfish reasons, so we can kind of enjoy the game we love so much and take our minds off this horrible pandemic, at least for 3 hours or 6 or 9 if you're lucky enough to watch football all day and night. But another thing I'd like to add, the theme of our podcast is I'm a Gen Xer, Dom's a Gen Zer. We kind of have different perspectives on how we like to watch sports, fantasy sports, gaming, etc. And one of the things I think we have in common that cut across the generations is the Red Zone channel, which Dom and I enjoy a lot. And when I'm a Giants fan, as we all know, so there's not a heck of a lot to watch. So I enjoy watching the snippets of the other games, no commercials. Yeah, they show a lot of the highlights, but there are times there's not a heck of a lot going on. So you get to tune in on some guys. I mean, that's how Dom discovered T. Higgins, watching Joe Burrow drive against the Eagles in that infamous tie game. And that's my last parting thought for you. When you're a fantasy football player, don't just look at the numbers. Don't just look at what some so-called expert on ESPN or whatever site says you should pick up this week. Watch the game, see who's getting the targets. We kind of spotted Josh Kelly by watching, of all things, Hard Knocks on HBO, and then saw him in the first game look good against the Bengals. Use your eyes to watch fantasy football too, not just the data.
Absolutely. Some great insight and need from both Dominic and Chris Ardieri. Catch them at Dominic, both of them. Catch them at Domination Sports Nation. You can go ahead and also hit them up on Instagram at Domination Sports Nation. Adrock, want to give you a special shout out. I know you're trying to go ahead and either ask a question or just check out the show. We truly appreciate it. Loved your questions from the week before. So if you have any questions for us before we head on out, we'll just go ahead and wait a couple seconds before we head on out for you, unless you want to just go ahead and just pop them on by. Remember, at Chris L Sports, at Domination Sports Nation on Instagram. Oh, there you go. Right there for you. Yes. Is Julio Jones tradable at this point in time? Okay, let's go. Is Julio Jones tradable? Chris Ardieri and Dominic, we'll go ahead and hit both of you up on the way out.
Absolutely. Dom, did you not say this earlier this week that you could see Julio Jones being traded in leagues? Because I'm gonna defer to you on this, because you deserve all the credit for saying it long before I did.
Yeah, I think that Matt Ryan definitely enjoys throwing to Calvin Ridley more now, as you've seen through the past couple of games. So I think Julio Jones is definitely tradable at this point, especially if someone's desperate at the wide receiver position. Go out and trade him, see what you can get. I know running backs haven't been so good this year, so if someone's willing to trade a good running back for him, you should definitely go do it.
I'll add to that. I wouldn't be surprised if Julio Jones, the football player, gets traded. Never mind the fantasy player.
There you go. Absolutely. Because right now he's playing on a bad team, and I definitely could see him as a possible wideout that is on the move before the NFL trade deadline. And yes, if you have Julio Jones, it might be in your best interest to trade him now or to seek a trade for him. Although if you're trading it, or actually if you're trying to get him on your team, be aware of what Chris and Dominic, both of them said, especially what Chris said in regards to possibly being trade bait. And if he is traded to another team, he may not have the dominant role on that team as like he does now. He may end up being a number 2 on another team. So you got to be wary of that if he does get traded. But yes, he is very much in as far as tradable assets right now that you need to go ahead and seek out to better your team. I would definitely go ahead and say that Julio Jones is tradable at this point in time. Another great question. You guys have been awesome for today's show. AdRock, we truly appreciate the compliments that you give our show each and every week. If you can, and you need to check out the rest of the show, I'm going to have this up on audio coming no later than Thursday morning. It'll be right there for you. In fact, I'm going to try and get it up there tonight just for you, my friend. If you want to go ahead and check that out later tonight or early tomorrow morning, wherever you get your podcasts, it'll at least be up on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many other different outlets. We truly appreciate it. By the way, AdRock says thank you, and says a special thank you to Chris and Dom, because they were truly sensational on the show. Chris, as always, Dominic, thank you for appearing on the first time with us right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Got to go ahead and check out AdRock, their show, Domination Sports Nation, wherever you get your podcasts. Well, guys, it's been great having you both on the show. I know it's late for you, Dom, so I don't want to keep you any further, but I truly appreciate your insight. I'm hoping you can come back. The red carpet is right there for you. You're welcome to come back anytime Dad lets you. And Dad, you're okay to come back on too. How about that?
Well, after tonight, Gerald, I don't blame you, because Dom's a heck of a lot better than this and has a lot better memory. I'll tell you that much.
Well, you both are beating the pants off of me. I'll tell you that much. But it is such a great honor to have you both on the program this week. I'm looking forward to week 5 in the NFL. AdRock, and also as well, I want to go ahead and thank Chicken Man and also Blue Crew Chef for their great questions on the show. Just truly great to have you aboard watching us. And also thank everybody for listening to us each week. Well, before we head on out, Gerald is trading Chris for Dom. AdRock, you never know. I might just be doing that. You'll have to check out next week, though, right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Good one, AdRock. Good one.